Some singers do an amazing job solo or with the band they are a part of, but what about the vocalists who have so much creativity and musical ideas that they need more than one outlet? There are many examples out there. This video is going to look at 10 singers in more than one band. You'd be surprised how many singers extend themselves to different groups, often at the same time. This video is not a top 10, no ranking, just a list. A list of amazing singers who are not satisfied with one group. You know how these videos work, let's get to it. Starting off with one of the most well-known voices in heavy music and has succeeded in 3 different bands. Maynard James Keenan has been able to make 3 unique directions dating back to the early 90s, and no matter how angry, beautiful, or weird each band is respectively, they succeed with Mr. Keenan in front, or in back. He likes to hide in back live sometimes. He always does whatever he wants. His voice and creativity and tool have always been a standout feature that made him such a huge deal, and 20 years later, I'm still sharing the gospel of A Perfect Circle and how amazing his performances are across many albums. And then he can be bonkers in Puscifer. Bonkers is a fair term. He is a charismatic enigma, but also a key part of every band he's in, and each band has succeeded behind him. His projection and ability to do different styles fits well with different bands, and that has only propelled Maynard James Keenan further. A man as talented and successful as he is confusing. From working at Tower Records to the dynamic vocalist of alt-metal legends Deftones, Chino Moreno's silky smooth tone along with his loud shouts have been the voice of many styles of bands, even going outside of rock and metal. The various side projects that Moreno has done have a distinct feel from Deftones, but still have that charm from Chino, and after a side project cycle, right back to Deftones. That has normally been the system for Chino Moreno, and while Deftones is going to have a fan base coming back to them band forever, it's good that Chino can have other outlets to dabble in digital and dream pop and synthwave and other styles across many different sounds, and Cross is being my personal favorite with new music coming soon. Deftones are hard to describe to anyone who hasn't heard them before, let alone every other group Chino Moreno has sang with. That's a realm Chino fits well in, however, with his voice, and that translates well to other subgenres. Here's hoping for more Deftones and Chino side projects. Blur and Gorillaz, 2 big names for decades with the voice of Damon Albarn, each with a wildly different history. While it was Blur that made Albarn a known voice through the world in the 90s, it was Gorillaz, I feel, that carried his work into pop culture and household name territory in the early 2000s. Myself, like many my age, learned about Blur from Song 2. Blur became massive in the UK, but we're still growing in the US. But when Clint Eastwood dropped from Gorillaz in the early 2000s, I feel like Albarn was launched into the stratosphere. And at that point, both bands had strong fan bases and support in America. We've seen less from each band over the years, and Gorillaz have consistently evolved in formats and styles over time, but one thing that's never been in question in Albarn's performance and creativity in different paths. That innovation and different thinking for alternative has lasted for decades. Now to change it up with a man who was well known for one group and then jumped into an even more well-known band. Skiba for many years was the voice behind Alkaline Trio going back to the late 90s, and in 2015 was brought in to fill in the needed spot for Blink-182, an alt-rock and pop-punk voice that went from an underrated voice to an underrated band to standing alongside Mark Hoppus. Add a side project Heavens in the mid-2000s and his own solo albums, Skiba gets his voice heard. That jump into Blink-182, however, I feel changed his status in pop-punk, as it does feel like the adoption of one band into another, and Blink-182 has released 2 albums with Skiba since. Alkaline Trio have also released an album and toured in the past few years, and as of this video's posting, Skiba is still pulling double duty. I do predict more music coming from both bands sooner than later, and Skiba will be singing on both. As time has gone on, he's become more well-known in pop-punk. Speaking of Blink, Tom DeLonge also had ventures outside of Blink-182. During Blink's run, DeLonge worked for several years with Angels and Airwaves along with the short-lived Boxcar Racer, and even if his run with Blink has been done for a while, it's worth pointing out how much DeLonge kept up for so long before his singing duties started being detracted by the extraterrestrial. Aliens exist indeed. Tom DeLonge's voice is not for everyone, and that's been made clear over the years, but the music he has helped made with and be a part of, and with his singing, has had a long cultural impact. His voice was a big part of people's childhoods and helped give pop-punk a mainstream audience. People don't give enough credit to the longevity of Angels and Airwaves, as well as Tom and that band have put out 6 albums going back to 2006. Tom DeLonge has put out a lot of music with 2 big names for a long time. If he wants to step back and shout, "Where are you?" to the sky when looking for aliens, he's earned it. One of my favorite singers of all time, and in my opinion, one of the best voices in rock history. Everything Chris Cornell touched didn't just turn to gold, but it was an everlasting gold that won't lose its shine. From the late 80s with grunge icon Soundgarden to the 2000s with the jaw-dropping supergroup Audioslave, Chris Cornell should be the singer that other singers aspire to be in technique and volume. Technique and volume are what Cornell had a massive amount of in every song he recorded. Go back and listen to Bad Motorfinger and hear how loud and clear his projection is. Listen to Audioslave self-titled and hear how much force he has at different speeds. He could do it all in different types of music. Add Temple of the Dog to the list of his accomplishments. Along with his own solo work, his voice was cherished for many reasons, and he was not stingy with it. He made himself heard in different generations. Soundgarden, Audioslave, whichever band and style you prefer more, Cornell was a key part of it. Moving to a man close to Cornell, Chester Bennington was one of the most recognizable voices from the early 2000s and beyond. It was not just Linkin Park that he was associated with, though. As a musician who wore his heart on his sleeve in every song, Bennington made his presence felt with Linkin Park and then became the featured singer with Stone Temple Pilots, which still feels like a fever dream that happened. Grey Days and Dead by Sunrise were also solid, especially with the remastered old recordings of Grey Days seeing light now, but I look back and remember now only how dominant Linkin Park was in all of music, but also how big of a deal that announcement with Stone Temple Pilots was back in the day. He was with Stone Temple Pilots for over 2 years. The stars aligned perfectly for Chester to become one of the biggest names in that nu metal age from the late 90s and early 2000s, and he evolved along with that what he created. He embodied a lot of emotions for many music fans, and it's great that we were able to hear so much of Chester through the years. One singer who has been a consistent mainstay in rock for decades that I still feel never gets enough credit is Myles Kennedy. After joining with 3/4 of Creed to make Alter Bridge, Myles proved just how much of a solid hand he can be in a group both on the mic and as a guitarist. Slash noticed this also, and Myles has been the chosen singer for over a decade with him as well. 2 distinctive acts, all with Myles' voice. After Myles left his earlier band, the Mayfield 4, and joined Alter Bridge, he was thrown into the spotlight, and that elevated the former band members of Creed by showing just how great everyone was in Alter Bridge. Myles' voice and performance were crucial to that, and many people in the industry noticed. When Slash chose Kennedy as his permanent singer for his solo work, I was not expecting it, but I've been proven how great it worked for 4 Slash albums with Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators. He's been the voice for both for a long time, and it doesn't look like there's any slowing down for Slash or Alter Bridge, which is great. Now for the voice of Faith No More, who has been part of roughly 500 bands and projects, give or take. It's impressive that I just made that joke, and it's actually somewhat believable, as Patton has sang with so many groups and even one-time projects that it's hard to keep up. Kicking down the door in the 80s, becoming an icon for years, and making sure everyone knows how weird he can get at any moment. Faith No More, in my opinion, will never get enough credit for all that group has done, and Patton was instrumental with making a new sound in rock from the 80s to the 90s, and he had diversity in his performances. Patton could switch techniques for almost any song or group and still be a powerhouse. Patton said that he can sing in a 6-octave range. That's impossible sounding, but since it's Mike Patton, I believe it. Along with being a producer for bands like the Dillinger Escape Plan and an inspiration for many rock and metal acts like Deftones and Incubus, he has also been the champion of non-mainstream music. He's represented it well. Possibly one of the most well-known examples of a singer having 2 distinctive styles and personalities being shown in 2 different bands. Corey Taylor has been working with Slipknot and Stone Sour for well over 20 years each. It's interesting to think just how much of rock and metal have been impacted by these groups, and along with all that is a maniacal singer who refuses to ever slow down. Corey Taylor is a man who refuses to sleep when he would rather be involved with 20 different projects, including platinum-selling bands. Not only did he keep up with the madness of 2 big names for a long time, but he greatly succeeded with both and gave something different with each. Maybe it's because he's so intense and wanting to be a part of so much that made him successful. Along with the massive presence that Corey has with Slipknot and Stone Sour, or now his own solo album ventures, you also feel like he's giving it his all. You never question authenticity or effort when he's involved. Corey Taylor is still moving on and trying to take the world over one stage at a time. And that was a look at 10 singers who work in different bands. Know of another vocalist pulling double or triple duty? There are many out there. Leave a comment and let everyone know. Big thanks to my patrons, and a special thanks to Chris Doman and Dom Noble. You can have a say in upcoming videos, get weekly new music playlists, and see videos early by supporting Rocked on Patreon. It helps a ton. Please click the link in the video description for more info. Please subscribe and ring the bell to get notified of upcoming videos, and you can keep up to date with Rocked on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Isn't it interesting how some of the lesser loved singers in rock rarely sing for more than one band? The ones where the voices just aren't strong enough? I guess we should be thankful.